Group F, Belgium -188 to win it. Croatia, runners up in the last World Cup, they're plus 250. Morocco 10-1. Canada 12-1. I like Canada just generally. I think we talked about in the last episode different cores that have been playing together for a long time that are pulling in the same direction, that know how to like kind of just play to their strengths. And this Canadian team not only has some talent, right? Like David's great, Alfonso Davies. Boy, that was scary. Thought he was going to miss the World Cup for a second there, but they have some game breakers, which should help them, I think, cause some trouble against Croatia and Morocco. And Belgium is, Belgium. I think all three of us are down on Belgium's chances. I actually think a bet on them at 20-1 to finish at the foot of the table is my favorite bet here in Group F, because, like I said at the top, someone's going to do it. One of the big boys is going to do it. And the other groups, like we talk about how Costa Rica's in one, you got Iran and Tunisia and Australia and others, like Cameroon in the group with Brazil. And then, Portugal, I think you can make a case for, but the number's much shorter. So I like Belgium 20-1, finish last. I like Canada as a long shot. However you want to play them, it's fine with me. But I think both the two teams at the top here, Belgium, because of the way they play going in the wrong direction, and Croatia, because of their age profile, are vulnerable. So Canada for me are a team that I'll be circling here, and Belgium as a team to fade. You two, though, like Morocco. BJ, I'll let you go first.
I love Morocco to get through at 2-1. Here's the thing about Morocco is if you look at their underlying numbers throughout African qualifying and even the African Cup of Nations, like they've been the best in the entire continent. Like they've had a +1 XG differential throughout African qualifying. African qualifying, what happens, there are a lot of low event type matches. Teams play very, very, very defensive. So it's harder to get margin in Africa than it is in Asia or some other type of qualification. So getting a high XG differential per 90 in Africa is actually kind of impressive for Morocco. They have a ton of talent throughout this entire squad. Obviously, the key man is Achraf Hakimi, who plays for PSG, one of the best right backs in the world. He's their main man in terms of ball progressing, getting up the wings. But the bigger thing with Morocco is they've had the best underlying metrics. Like since March of 2021, they've 17 straight matches. They've won the expected goals battle throughout Africa. Is two of their best players, Hakim Ziyech and Mazraoui, who plays for Bayern Munich, they haven't played for the last 15 months for the national team because they had a falling out with the manager who, you can read about it, but essentially he said some not some nice things about those two guys. And they said, well, screw this, I'm not playing for the national team. Well, that guy's been fired. They brought in a new manager in August, and he mended the relationship with those two guys, and he selected them for the friendlies. So now they're going to be playing for the national team. So two of their best players didn't play when they went through this crazy run, and now they're only going to be better going into this World Cup. So, what you're going to get is a lot of crosses from this team. Like Enceneri from Sevilla is very used to that, playing under Lopetegui. Like, obviously with the, Mazraoui and Hakimi getting up the wings, like they can punish a lot of teams in this group. So this is a well-drilled squad that has great underlying metrics, that can play a really good system that I think is very, very live to get through in this group. And like you mentioned with Belgium, like the golden generation's over. Like, what does Belgium have that gets you really excited besides Kevin De Bruyne? Like, they're going to play Eden Hazard, who hasn't really played that much for Real Madrid. It's completely cooked. Romelu Lukaku, who knows if he's even going to play in this World Cup? He's been out forever. He had a setback with his thigh injury. So, and honestly, he hasn't looked good since he made the move to Chelsea and even back to Inter. And then in defense, like, are they really going to roll with Vertonghen, Denayer, and Alderweireld again? Like, this is a very aging again. Like,
this
seriously.
is the year Belgium finally gets their trophy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, they're going to play a defensive midfield pairing of Tielemans and Axel Witsel. Tielemans is obviously very good in terms of ball progression, but he doesn't really do that great of defensive work for Leicester. So they'd be relying a lot of their, in terms of transition on Witsel, who's 33. That's concerning. So there's just like not a lot of talent with this Belgium squad. And they're probably the most vulnerable, I would say, of the favorites in this tournament, and one that I know a lot of people will be circling in that to get upset in that first round. And even what you saw with Belgium as well as the Euros is like, yes, they won their group that included Denmark. Even though the match gets Denmark, they got completely
Luck
dominated.
box.
Complete luck box. But what happened when they got to the round of 16? They had to play Portugal. They scored early, and then they had to sit in a low defensive block for pretty much the entire match. And they looked like they had no idea what they were doing. And they got
It wasn't terrible because Portugal.
I mean, it wasn't terrible, but they got very, very.
It was more about Portugal than Belgium.
Right. more about Portugal's finishing. But it highlights a bigger point that, like, once they get into the round of 16 and they have to play teams that are more possession dominant, like it's kind of concerning. So unless Kevin De Bruyne can, like, basically will them on his back, throughout this tournament, like Belgium's going out early. So I have no interest in playing Belgium as a favorite. The other two teams, Canada, I mean, Alphonso Davies is going to play. Like, how healthy is he going to be? Like, Canada's very, very direct. Like, they're very direct counterattack. And they have a lot of speed. Like, Jonathan David's in the form of his life. So, like, they have a lot of, and I mean, 10 expected goals throughout Europe. That's third best. And Europe's Big Five league. So that's kind of impressive. And then Croatia, I mean, they're just old, honestly. Like, the golden generation for Croatia is over. They have a great midfield, like, that can really dominate games. Besides the midfield, there's really just not much talent. Like, they're just gonna be relying on Kramaric as a false nine up top, which is just not gonna really get it done. Goalkeeper's a big time concern. He had a -2 XG post shot XG plus minus at the Euros. He was very, very bad. Lovren's 33 and playing in Russia. Like, there's just not a lot to like about this Croatian team in terms of, mimicking that magical run in the 2018 World Cup. So I love Morocco to get through in this group. Like, I think they have more talent, honestly, than Canada. And I think they can give Croatia a big time run. And then obviously Belgium's very, very vulnerable as a favorite. So Morocco plus 200 to get through in this group is one of my favorite bets throughout the entire World Cup.
I think
this group is going to be so fun.
Yeah, it's going to be. I was just about to say, this is the group that you might want to just sprinkle Canada and Morocco to advance 40-1 as a dual forecast, right? Like,
I stole that off my sheet.
It's off. Oh, is that your favorite bet here?
No, well, I got a few things.
I just, before I turn it to you, like, the thing about we're talking about these age profiles. Normally, I wouldn't worry too much about them if this was a normal summer World Cup, but all these guys have been playing, club for their clubs.
Brozovic is just coming off an injury,
right? Like
Kovacic is playing a ton.
It does matter here,
as well.
More than normal one.
37.
It's a super crammed World Cup.
Yeah,
in the desert. I care more about I generally do think, because here's the thing, and this is more philosophical, like bigger picture on these international tournaments. The data we have is so talent dependent, skewed. Like, how many teams played their best lineup? How many times? Who'd you play? When were the matches? Like, the managers change so often. And even then the samples are small. Like, we're talking about like 15 matches for 10 matches for a lot of these teams. So there's more art in this than there is when you listen to Wonder Goal. You'll hear me talk about XG all the time. Like, I don't use as much XG when I talk about international tournaments. And I think age profile is a really good way to figure out where teams are trending, who might be in trouble. If things go wrong, where could they go wrong? And the two teams at the top of this group on paper are two of the biggest teams where you're like, the cliff could come here and we just don't know it yet. And I think for Belgium, I think BJ mentioned it with Lukaku. Lukaku was in great form heading into the Euros last year. That is no longer the case anymore. Like, he had a great season at Inter Milan. He went to the Euros. Him and De Bruyne are awesome. Like, that's a scary thought betting against those two players. But Lukaku has not been the same player. He's over, right at 30 now. BJ mentioned the ages of the center backs. Belgium loves to play with the ball, but they don't have a lot of ball winners. Tielemans is not a ball winner. Witsel is old. Their fullbacks have always been a problem. Castagna is okay. Meunier, really? Like, Thomas Meunier is going to, so like, there's so many questions. And Hazard has not been productive in any minutes, any club in the last 3 years. So there's all kinds of questions. Dries Mertens is gone now. Like, Belgium struggled at the last Euros. They got a deflected goal where Patricio botched for Portugal, and then they just sat deep, and Portugal, we'll get to them in a second, like, they have their problems and couldn't break them down. Hit the post, had some chances, but a lot of long-range pot shots. Belgium then played Italy, got completely exposed by Italy's counter press. Belgium couldn't get out of their own half. What'd they do? They brought on Jeremy Doku and just started bombing balls up to him and letting him run at people, and it worked, but that's not going to work here. Because, one, I don't expect him to play as much. That was like the plan B emergency. Like, we're just going to get it up to Lukaku and Doku and let them wreck. I don't think they can do that this year because Lukaku's out of form and Doku's really not taken a step forward since that match. So I love fading Belgium. How do we do that? I have a couple ideas. The biggest one is Morocco to win the group is 12-1. I sprinkled some there. Morocco to qualify is plus 200. That's going to be my main bet. I agree with BJ. But I will also be placing a small wager on Canada and Morocco to both go through at 40-1. You can bet that at bet 365. The thing that's interesting about Canada, of all the teams who might be best designed to sit deep and counter in the whole tournament, it might be Canada, because they're solid defensively and they're forward runners with Davies, Tajon Buchanan, go Orange, and Jonathan David, electric. Their midfield has enough ball winning that I can trust them. And we've seen them do it in CONCACAF. So do I think they'll probably be a little bit leakier defensively than they were in CONCACAF, because CONCACAF doesn't have any like attacks that really like are super dynamic? Yes. But I think they're going to be able to hit teams and score in transition, especially Belgium. And then of course we talked about Croatia. Like everybody on their profile is like over 30 at this point. When you look at their profile and like who's going to be the main starters, like Modric is ageless, like he doesn't age, but he is 37, and I don't think he's going to be able to play all the minutes. Lovren old, Vida old, Vrsaljko old, Kramaric 31, Perisic 33. Like you're not getting 270 minutes from these players in 10 days. So that's the red flag. There's no easy game in this group either, where you can be like, oh, we'll rest them for this game, because you could lose.
Yeah, and Croatia, let's be honest, they sucked at the Euros too. They lost the expected goals battle every single match. I understand they were in a kind of a difficult group, but like they played Scotland, they played Czech Republic, and obviously the bonkers match against Spain, where they conceded 5 goals. But like they've been great throughout World Cup qualifying, but they've been playing Slovakia and Slovenia. Like they haven't really played the top tier talent.
Things change quickly in international soccer. And this even goes back to the last group. Like Costa Rica, I had them out of the group in my predictions in 2014 when I like made my little bracket on ESPN. I was like, oh, they had a golden generation. Everybody got old. They're all over 30. Same thing is true for Belgium, just about. Belgium has some young talent. Like they'll be okay in the future, whatever. But Costa Rica, you look at Belgium, you look at Croatia. These are teams who are not footballing traditional powerhouses. They go through peaks and valleys, and Belgium and Croatia are the two teams that are teetering on the cliff here. And I think by the next cycle, the next Euros, we're going to see very different teams for both of them. So that's when it kind of restarts. And I want to be there for the end of the cycle.